With the exception of Andor in the first season of The Mandalorian, the rest of the Disney Plus Star Wars shows that have been made haven't been my thing. Andor was exceptional. The first season of The Mandalorian was a new and fun standalone adventure. The rest, well, not for me, but that doesn't make me cynical. I still get excited to check out new Star Wars projects because as someone pushing 40 years old who has been a lifelong Star Wars fan, this isn't the first time Star Wars hasn't appealed to me. This isn't the first time new Star Wars projects have left me disappointed. So, I'm used to it. In the past, there was a lot of Star Wars that I liked and a lot of Star Wars that I disliked. And in the present, the same is true. Perspective. Life is busy, but I finally got around to watching the first 3 episodes of The Acolyte. I don't understand the controversy, if you want to call it that, surrounding this show. I don't even want to call it a controversy because look, anything and everything that can be construed or misconstrued by a certain segment of viewers, especially when money is involved, will be talked about. A lot of people are neck deep in this internet culture war and they're constantly looking for things to be upset about. And being upset about things and making multiple videos in a day about how such and such is woke or whatever brings in the dough. There's an incentive for complaining about otherwise pointless shit. That incentive is money. Ranting and raving about little misconstrued quotes here and there is a business model. Like when Leslie Headland and the person interviewing her during an interview, they jokingly said that R2-D2 was a lesbian. Like any normal person would giggle at that because the idea of a robot trash can has any kind of sexuality is silly. You know, any normal person that sees that would just go, ha, that's just kind of a silly thought. But no, if you have a big platform that likes to complain about everything under the sun and likes to make everything into a controversy, then oh boy, it's time to light the fire of rage. Like I watched multiple people like watching that interview and they're like stone-faced, like angry about some silly bullshit. Come on, men. Fucking crack a smile. I don't know, man. This shit is exhausting. Anyway, I'll talk about that more later, I guess. I really like the mystery surrounding the first episode when the audience and the characters are trying to figure out a mystery together and everything isn't obvious to us as viewers at first. It makes for a more interesting and engaging journey. We feel like we're along for the ride rather than us being privy to more information than the characters in the story. Sometimes the opposite's true. Sometimes it is fun to be in the know, but being in the dark alongside the characters makes it feel like we're right there with them, learning and figuring things out together. Now, this murder mystery was solved pretty quick, and maybe I wish it would have had a little more time to breathe a bit longer, but they're feeding us new mysteries along the way, new mysteries to kind of engage with. And at the time that I'm making this video, I'm 2 episodes behind. I still haven't watched episode 4, and I haven't watched episode 5. So take that as you will. The pacing is good too. I like the broad strokes of the story. So far, at least, you know, it breathes and takes its time. It's not in any rush to throw a lot of information at us. It's not in any rush to spell things out for us. This is classic weekly episodic television where in every episode something new is learned. A layer of the onion is peeled and we're one step closer to having the breadcrumbs revealed to us. I'm not a big fan of witches and stuff like that in Star Wars. That chant was pretty lame too. What I do like is observing a different version of the Force, a different side of the Force, a different interpretation of the Force, I suppose. Like having a different view of the Force. What is it? How is it wielded? It makes sense that in this big galaxy, there would be various groups or factions that discover and use the Force in their own way. So I really do like that as a concept. But the whole witches and Dathomir, even from the Clone Wars, and even this coven in the Acolyte, it's all felt very silly and goofy to me, forever. It always has. I'm not saying it's bad. If you like it, great, but that specific stuff has never been my thing. Now, what I really like about what I've seen so far involving the witches is how the Jedi are this organization of control, right? This organization that is attempting to have complete ownership of the Force. You can't use the Force that way. You have to use the Force our way. Unrestricted use of the Force, come with us. Trying to take kids away from families, it's sinister in a way, is it not? Like, unless you believe in this dogma, unless you follow this dogma, it is absolutely sinister. But the Jedi think they're doing the right thing, having this control. It's interesting. I love when we see the cracks in the Jedi ways. Obviously, this is not the first time we've seen the faults of the Jedi, but to see them scouring the galaxy in this moment, trying to accomplish what they're trying to accomplish, it's interesting. Who watches The Watchmen? Who watches The Watchmen? I'm not a big fan of the acting in The Acolyte. The only character that I've enjoyed so far is Jedi Master Soul. I'm not a big fan of how the show is shot either. I'm not a big fan of how the show looks. For me, that's all the biggest disappointment. It feels claustrophobic. And I don't know if that's because how it was shot. Maybe it was shot on the volume the majority of the time or green screen. And I could be completely wrong about that. Maybe it was shot on locations and physical sets and all that stuff. But there is an intangible quality to the show that just feels claustrophobic to me. And again, the acting leaves a lot to be desired for me. So many of the characters feel the same. I think the standout is, again, Soul. So, yeah. Out of every Disney era show and movie that we've gotten so far, The Acolyte feels the most prequel-y. From the acting to the directing, the dialogue, even the look, it feels to me very George Lucas. So it's kind of interesting to see a bunch of prequel fans disliking it. I mean, I'm not, obviously, that doesn't make it a default enjoyment of prequel fans, but it's an interesting observation that I had. Interesting to me, at least. Watching the show, I just thought, I feel like this is right up prequel fans' alley, But I guess not. I suppose not. I am curious what's going to happen in the 4th and 5th episodes that I still need to watch. I'm guessing that there are some nefarious deeds that the Jedi took part in. I'm guessing that this was more orchestrated than they led on. I'm curious who is pulling the strings, behind the scenes of May's actions. There's just enough mystery in this show to keep me wanting to continue watching the show. Outside of the bits of mystery that still need to be solved, there's not much else for me. The show isn't really for me beyond the few mystery boxes that need to be opened, which is fine. Not every project is going to be my thing. Not every project needs to be my thing. I'm almost 40 years old. I've seen this fandom for a long time. I was 13 when The Phantom Menace came out. The idea of this era of Star Wars being the first time that some Star Wars fans were disappointed is hilarious to me. It's kind of always been like this. There's a lot of Star Wars that I don't like, and there's a lot of Star Wars that I do like, and that's been the case forever. That's been the case well before Disney acquired the franchise. And I constantly get called a shill, and I'm like, dude, I've liked way less of what's come out in the Disney era than I've disliked. Like, I probably have enjoyed 20%, if I had to guess, if I had to put a number on it. I'm just not an asshole about it. What do you have to do to not be labeled a shill if you have a YouTube channel? Do you have to upload like a video a day ranting and raving about what you don't like? Do you have to use buzzwords like woke and shit like that? Is that the only way to not be labeled a quote unquote shill? I mean, fuck. I have a career. I have a family. It's nice being normal. And obviously now the fandom and the loudness and the interaction is way different. And now we have this loud internet culture war that's constantly on fire. We have this digital monetization of outrage over mostly inconsequential bullshit, where people can just upload endless amounts of content repeating themselves over and over again about the same nonsense and make money. Literally creating controversy over things that most normal people would just shrug off and go, meh, well, okay, it's kind of silly, but whatever. But no, got to upload a video and stir the pot. I've said this before, but imagine if YouTube was a thing back in the day, when George Lucas was talking about George W. Bush and Revenge of the Sith, when George Lucas named a Star Wars character after Newt Gingrich, when George Lucas talked about the Emperor being Richard Nixon. Imagine the original Star Trek series and all the boundaries that it pushed, even by having a Russian in the cast. In the 60s, imagine the outrage and the thumbnails if that were the case today. The idea that the Acolyte is pushing an agenda is so fucking silly to me. And that complaint is such a transparent example of grasping at straws. Anyway, The Acolyte, meh, not really my thing so far. I don't really think it's that good. The critic score and the audience score on Rotten Tomatoes both majorly missed the mark for me. I think the critic score is way higher, way too inflated than it should be. And I think the audience score is, well, I think it's kind of obvious what's going on there. Anyway, just watch what you want to watch. Stop being embarrassing on the internet. I want my kid to be embarrassed because I'm a silly goose. I don't want her to be embarrassed of me because I made 1,000 videos bitching and moaning about bullshit.